Hello, everyone, and welcome to Novels and Nightcaps, the podcast where we read, drink, and ramble. My name is Gabe.
And I'm Nor.
And this week we're diving deep into R.F. Kuang's Katabasis, or Katabasis. I'm probably going to be saying both the entire episode, so I apologize to everyone listening, but I've heard the author say both, therefore that's just what we're going to go with. But as always, before we get into the book, Nor, what are you drinking?
This week I've made myself a gimlet, I believe it's called. It is gin, lime juice, and simple syrup. And
That sounds
let me taste it real
delicious.
quick.
Taster-oni.
I can only taste the lemon juice, but
Hey, dude, I'm not gonna lie, that
It's
sounds
pretty good.
delicious.
it's pretty good.
That sounds better than what I got. I mean, what I got is nice, don't get me wrong. I got some good old-fashioned Jameson whiskey with a big old rock here, big old cube. It's pretty good. I mean, is what you expect whenever you drink whiskey straight. But you know, for me, I really wanted to represent my opinion on the book, and to be honest, it's pretty mellow, I think is probably the best word to fit it. It's not too offensive. It wasn't particularly outstanding, yet at the same time, it wasn't awful. I enjoyed my time with it. I think it's a decent read enough. What about you, Nora? Why did you make your drink?
I was gone for a couple weeks on a business trip, so I didn't really have a lot of time to do some shopping. I looked around with what I had, and I've always wanted to try the gimlet because I like sour drinks. I've come to realize, and it was more of an afterthought, kind of like this book in many ways. Like I read this book, I liked it enough, and here we are talking about Katabasis.
Yeah, I'll be fully
So-
honest. I did finish it at 6 p.m. today. I listened to it for 3 hours today to make sure I could have it finished before our our podcast. So that maybe puts in your mind a little bit on our thoughts. But
Mhm.
before we really express ourselves here, we should probably explain what the book is about. So, general overview. Nor, what do we got?
Katabasis comes from the ancient Greek, meaning descent into the underworld. And so it's a very common literary trope about a hero's descent to hell, to the underworld. And R.F. Kuang here literally uses that term to describe our main protagonist going to hell to rescue their advisor, their PhD advisor, right? So these guys study analytic magic, I believe is what the actual
Yeah.
legitimate term is. Basically magic, right? They're magic nerds, they're illusionists, and after an accident kills their professor, this girl named Alice and her rival Peter decide to go to hell, rescue their professor, and make all of their grad school years actually worth it. But, along the way, they meet foes, they meet friends, they learn a thing or two about themselves, and ultimately, well, we'll get into that in a few moments.
And I have to say, it is, in my opinion, one of the best book premises I've heard in a long time. So I'm actually a PhD student, which is part of why I was really excited to read this. I feel like it's rare that you read a fantasy or science fiction book that you can actually relate to in some way, mostly because it's usually about a boy on a farm or something like that. And I'm not going to lie, guys, I've never lived on a farm, so I don't really know much about that, but I can relate to being a PhD student. I'm a history PhD student, and I shared the book premise with some of my colleagues, some of my friends, and they thought it was the craziest thing ever. And it really does get a reaction. Whenever you share the premise with people, it gets a physical reaction because it's absurd. It's an absurd sounding premise, and at the beginning it plays just as absurd. And so I would say that's one thing that this book really does have going for it is the start, the premise, the buy-in is pretty gripping. You really do get at the start really thrust into the world and into the action. There's not much preamble here. It starts pretty fast. So yeah, I would say if you struggle with getting into a book, this does a pretty good job of starting off strong where you get right into the action.
Yeah, it really just kicks off right off the bat. It's literally the first few sentences, they explain it pretty quickly. And it does have that sort of absurd charm to it at the beginning, where it feels so over the top. But if you have any experience in academia, you can kind of see where this is going. And so a lot of the themes are very like love-hate relationship with grad school, with academia, with that whole body of work and society, right? It's a lot of fun. And if you know anything about R.F. Kuang is, she's a very scholarly writer. We've both read Babel before, and we have our own thoughts on that book. But overall, it was a pretty enjoyable experience up until the ending. So, seeing another book by R.F. Kuang with such a cool premise, I pitched that book to Gabe, and I thought he would like it.
Immediately, I was like, yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. Arf Kwong is pretty incredible. Like, I'm not sure, Nora, have you gotten to see any of her interviews online? Like, have you watched any of her content?
Yes, she's very funny. She's
She's
a very
really
funny
fun,
woman. Yeah.
like surprisingly funny. Not that you don't think she, but like, I don't know. It just, reading her work, she doesn't necessarily act like her work. I don't know if that tracks, but she's
She's
really
a lot more
likable.
casual.
Yeah. Especially with
She's
her
very
books being
personable.
so stressed, I think is a good way of putting it. She's really casual, very funny, very well spoken. I really like her. She's quite like charismatic. So I would highly recommend, if you're thinking about getting into Katabasis, go watch some stuff on RF Kwong first. I think it might frame the book a little nicer whenever you're going into it, because I don't think our review here is necessarily doing her justice. I think she's a very talented author. I think she's very funny human being, and I imagine a very nice human being. But that being said, we should probably give a little bit of our overall take here on the book, because to be honest, it's not necessarily too favorable. However, I don't think either of us were like particularly mean on anything. But anyways, Nor, overall impression of the book, what would you give it out of 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I give this book a solid 5. Cool premise, really cool premise. Everything about the book's premise like sold me instantly. And I was really excited for it. And I genuinely did like Babel for the most part. So I was excited to like read more of her work. Unfortunately, the characters are a little bland. The world, even though it's literally hell and it should sort of be exciting and like dangerous, never really felt alive in any way. And the plot itself was a little too basic, and I found myself wondering at times like when it was finally gonna pick up. And then it kind of did, it kind of didn't. And then before I knew it, I was already at the end of the book, and I was like, oh, she pretty much just lectured me on a lot of paradoxes, which I like. I like paradoxes, but, you know, I'm also here for a good story with an emotional core, and that just wasn't
Yes.
there. So,
Yeah,
not bad, not good.
I'm with you. I mean, I give it a 5.55 out of 10. So we're pretty spot on here in our opinion. Yeah, the characters left a lot to be desired. The plot left a lot to be desired. Her style, I want to mention though, is fantastic. If you read any of her other works, I would argue, probably gets better in the prose department compared to Babel. Like her actual, the way she narrates, all of that, the prose itself is quite well done, quite tight. However, I completely agree. The world left a lot to be desired. You don't really see the effect of magic on the overall world. Um, and how it's explained just isn't super satisfying, I would say. And overall, it's just a deeply unsatisfying book. It's not particularly offensive, but it doesn't land. It leaves a lot to be desired. However, I think you hit on the nose there with the paradox angle, because if you are looking for something that's quite heady, if you're wanting a little bit of that academic flair, you wanting to interact with academia as a whole and a lot of the big names in the sphere. I mean, you get a lot of those names here. You get a lot of philosophy, you get a lot of theory, a lot of that's here from different disciplines all over. And so if you're wanting some of that, then this is great for you. It's the same thing with Babel. Like there's now I didn't read it physically. Are there footnotes in the physical book?
Not in Katabasis, unlike in Babel. Yeah. No footnotes here.
Are there end notes? Is it like at the end of each chapter?
No, just maps at the very, very end.
Okay, because there are segments I know with some chapters, at least in the audio version, where it'll be like on paradoxes, and then it'll go into
Yeah,
a
those are
spiel.
different chapters.
Well, there's different chapters. Okay.
Yeah.
In the audio experience, just a guy starts talking, and you're like, "What's going on?" So I wasn't sure how it's formatted in the book itself, but there's a lot of interesting meat, and I think you can grow intellectually through listening to the book. It isn't dumb, I guess is what you could say. So if you're wanting something like that, this might be a good book for you.
Yes, I agree. I think if you like dark academia,
Mm.
like in Babel, you're gonna enjoy this book. If you like a more thoughtful approach to like magic, you might enjoy this one, although she doesn't really expand too much on the actual intricacies of magic, just in the theory behind it. And the style, like you said, the style is really well done, well written. I mean, she has a really beautiful way of explaining really dense topics, kind of like Andy Weir, right? But in a more elevated way. Andy Weir is
Yes.
more casual about it. R.F. Kuang just highlights the beauty and elegance of the high concepts that she talks about.
Yeah, I will say if you're not at all familiar with some of the like academic theories she's talking about, you're not going to walk away knowing it. Like she's not
Hmm.
it's not Andy Weir. I don't think you feel smart by reading it because some of it does go over your head. Like it went over my head
If
and I'm like, I don't know what
if
she's
anything,
talking
you
about.
feel too dumb.
Yes. Which I mean,
Yeah.
it makes the characters feel smart. So it does achieve
Hmm.
one thing where you really do feel like the characters in this world are part of a PhD program and are brilliant as they say they are. So that's
Like
one thing to be said.
for instance, there's so many times where they describe what hell actually looks like, and I don't think not once did I actually understand what it looked like. Like I know in theory what a hyperbolic space is,
Yeah,
but
but I don't know.
I
Yeah, I
don't really
don't
know
know.
what that looks like. So the
Yes.
whole time I was kind of lost. Everything felt really abstract, and I love abstract, but if you don't really know anything about this, it might be a little confusing.
Yeah, I don't mean that to insult any of our listeners. Give it your best shot if you want to, but it definitely was something that I noticed when reading it, where if you tune out for a second, you're like, I don't know. But overall, it's a fine book. I think if you're not in school anymore and you're looking for something to kind of engage your brain, but you're also looking for light story, it can be really useful for that. It can be really good. It is very different, I would say. That is one of the things that is it's very unique. Like I don't know if I've necessarily like plot wise, I've read plenty of stories that follow the similar thing. However, the setting, the character, like the combination of all these things, I don't know if I've ever read it before. And so that's part of what made the premise so interesting was it was combining a lot of different things that we are familiar with into a like potion that we've never seen. That being said, it's a mediocre potion. So just keep
Hmm.
that in mind, but it is interesting if you're wanting something new. All right. Anything else before we move on?
If you like Babel, check this one out.
Yeah, yeah,
That's about it.
I
If
I
you didn't
agree.
like this one, check Babel out, and you might like that one more. Either way,
Yeah,
check out Babel.
that's a good one. Yeah, I think Babel is worth the read. Now, spoiler free section is over. We probably should have said that before. That early part, spoiler free. It'll be
Hmm.
in the description area where we cut off the chapters. That'll be spoiler free. However, now we're diving into spoilers. We're gonna go through the characters, plot, impact, style, world, and rate those on a scale of 1 to 10 in order to really break down our thoughts on the book. So now we're entering spoiler territory. And we should first go into an area that we both agree needed improvement characters. Or
Hmm.
would you give characters and what did you think?
I gave characters 6 out of 10. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it again and again and again. Um, Characters are kind of everything for me. If the characters are not interesting enough, the story doesn't feel interesting enough for me, and I sort of lose any like emotional connection to the plot. Um, the characters started off really interesting. They started off as almost like satirical descriptions of like grad students of the obsessive nature, like so obsessed with their studies and their investment in academia to the point where they sacrifice half their lifespan to go to hell to save their professor. And they seem to hate each other at first, or at least Alice seemed to hate Peter so much at first that it was sort of amusing to me. And it sort of set this promise up of like awful people going to hell and maybe meeting their match over there, and then it just sort of never delivered on that. Granted, there were a lot of heartfelt moments between the two. It's it's very enemies to lovers in that sense, which I'm kind of a sucker for. I enjoy those stories. A lot of the dialogue between them was heartfelt, interesting, and you do get a sense that there's a history between them. So from an interrelationship sense, the characters were well done. Individually, however, the characters felt very shallow and not particularly interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I also give him a 6 out of 10. It didn't go anywhere, and I never particularly cared for the characters, which is not good. And I
Hmm.
consciously didn't care, which is even worse. It wasn't like I was shocked by my reaction whenever they were put in peril, but instead I was like, whatever. Which maybe I'm
Whatever.
calloused. I don't know. I think this is largely possibly like an individual thing, but I didn't find Alice to be too likable, just to be honest. She wasn't super like maybe I just couldn't relate to her personally. And then Peter, right? That's the other guy, Peter.
Hmm.
Peter was like too good. He was just too likable. He was too perfect. And the big reveal, I mean, we got to talk about his character reveal of him being sick. To me, just made him more likable. It just made him like more good. All of those relational failings are actually just Alice, not being considerate. Now, of course, it is on him because he's not explaining anything. But whenever we understand his plight, I mean, he's still like a good guy. Like it never compromised him in any sort of way that I think it should have possibly to make him more interesting.
Yeah, Peter specifically was very one-dimensional, and that explanation was supposed to add some depth to his character. And it was a good chapter, like it was an interesting reveal, and it didn't really actually add that depth that I think Kuang wanted to add. And as for
Well, like,
Alice, a lot of her choices felt so like self-destructive. And that is kind
yeah.
of the point of the story. Like that is her character, but at the same time, um there was rarely any redeeming qualities to those choices or to her character.
Well, I think
I didn't
also
really connect with her.
a self-destructive character is far more interesting and satisfying whenever the author is able to convince the reader, because it's from their perspective, that what they're doing isn't self-destructive. Because like I
Mhm.
never like her internal monologue was never convincing to me as a reader. As in her excuses for self-destructive behavior was obviously really wrong. Whereas what's a good book that does this well? Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow, I think is maybe a good example of self-destructive behavior that has a legitimate. I don't want to spoil the book, but it feels like it has a legitimate reasoning, and then in retrospect or on deeper contemplation, the reader is able to like understand that it's super self-destructive. Because I think that's an area where it's done really well. Because I want to feel like the main character sometimes, and I often found myself in opposition to Alice. She just was self-destructive, and there wasn't really any deeper reason beyond this want to succeed, really, and this like
Mhm.
drive for looking for meaning, which I get, that's a very human thing. It just could have been done better.
Yeah, I think as a reader, you don't buy that internal logic of hers. And like you said, if you can't buy the internal logic, then, the whole time you're reading the book, consciously thinking about how unreasonable and irrational her choices are. And what makes a character compelling is when you can kind of see her point. You can kind of see where she's going, where she's coming from. But with Alice, it just felt like, you're just self-destructing and your logic doesn't really make much sense. And so you're kind of watching like a really slow motion kind of video of a car crash. That's the best way I can describe it. It's like you're slowly watching her just self-destruct and it's not particularly satisfying
I will say
or
though that her confrontation with Grimes at the end of the book was pretty satisfying.
Mhm.
So I will say that I will give credit where credit's due. There was an ounce of like pent up aggression and frustration that I think they did a pretty decent job of unleashing it. Now, another character issue here is she really doesn't have much of of a progression there. It very much is it falls prey to the whole, like, I'm steady, I'm steady. "Oh, I just figured it out. I did it all. Like, I am the hero now," which was just I didn't necessarily buy. For me, it didn't land super well because it felt too sudden and the change was too stark. Uh, character arcs are, I think, best done when they feel like gradual changes over time. And there's a little bump at the end. That's a good sign where they have a choice and they make the right choice. However, this really did feel like not necessarily that she made the right choice, but all of a sudden, was honestly just felt like the author wanted this to happen, so it happened, which isn't a good feeling. Like it felt like it felt like a story that's being written, not like something that I'm experiencing. It really took me out.
Hmm. I'm really glad you brought that up because half the time it just feels like she makes all these like critical decisions. She makes the wrong decision like at so many points and then immediately regrets them. But it doesn't seem that she learns anything from these decisions. And then suddenly at the very end, which granted, it's a very satisfying ending. Satisfying, but not necessarily earned because it does feel like she just kind of figured it out at the very end. Like she had this epiphany because the book was nearing the end. It's like the author knew that she only had a couple pages left and she had already written all of this down. And so
No,
it
that's
did
a
feel
really
very
good
last
point.
minute.
I didn't really I never really put that together because, to be honest, um, and I mean, perhaps this is a good time to get the plot because I think this is kind of diving a little bit into that, but I just didn't really care much about what was going on. It just really, my biggest gripe with plot. So I gave it a 5.5 out of 10 just because it was, um, I feel like maybe I should have given it a little lower. However, I was like, okay, 5 is like average. Actually, it probably should be below average, but the problem with the plot was that it kept jumping back and spending too much time in the past that I didn't really care about and didn't really add to the present. And then in the present, nothing really meaningful was happening. It felt like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. It felt like a series of events rather than a significant and meaningful sequence.
Yeah, weirdly enough, the bulk of the story feels like it comes from the past, like the past events. Her relationship with Grimes, her relationship with Peter. Any scene in hell felt very bland, for lack of a better word. Every time they were in hell, they kept journeying forward. They went through their challenges fairly easily. And like hell felt very safe, which was an interesting concept, you know?
Like with the Weaver, I think is a great example. Like that was to me the most tense moment in the book. Whenever it was like, you got to choose the same one or else you'll die, and she chooses the wrong one, and like Peter's gonna die. And I'm like, oh, this is ballsy. Like this is interesting, and I was excited to see what happens. And then they just like out of nowhere randomly get saved via the bone creatures, and I that to me was it just felt kind of lazy, to be honest, because
Hmm.
one of the like beautiful things in writing is writing yourself into a corner and then having to be creative to find a way out. And this really felt like the situation where it's like, and then these guys swoop in and just save the day because I couldn't think of a better solution. Like there could have been something there that allowed for deeper characterization that would have helped the characters, made them a little deeper and more interesting. Yet that choice, it just wasn't the most interesting choice. And yeah, I do you agree with that? Like that was something that was my favorite scene and my least favorite scene all at the same time.
I think it sums up the bulk of the book, right? Like she has all these kind of cool ideas, but then the story just moves on very conveniently. Like our characters are very passive, it seems like. And it reminds me of this rule Pixar has, where it's like, is good or coincidence is good if it gets a character into a situation, not out of it. And a lot of the times these characters are just saved by other people and by happenstance, which, doesn't really make for a good story. It just
And it would have been different if this was at the beginning of the story. Like if this would have happened quite early on. Like I understand. I understand using that near the beginning to introduce like a character, right? Introduce a new character. But this was just used a little too late into the book in order for it to, because it was a tense situation. It was life or death stakes and it felt meaningful to the characters. Like this is a relationship breaking moment and it kind of got brushed over. It kind of got glossed over. You know, Peter gave her the silent treatment for a little bit and just that was it really. And that was kind of
Mhm.
frustrating. Like I would be dude, hey, if we were in the same situation and we had to pick the right apple and you decided to kill me, I would be so much more angry. Like he was and you know, that really messed with me that it didn't last longer, that they kind of got over it just a little too quick.
They
And
do make up so quickly.
yeah, but so that's one area that I think really struggled a lot. But problem with the past. Now, if you haven't already, go watch our review on Andy Weir's book Project Hail Mary, because that's a good example of how to do flashbacks well. That's how to do it well. And I think that there's other examples where it's integrated into a scene and it's like a couple pages long and it's not a big deal. That is also okay. Like to have it be a small taste of flashback just to, you know, give a little flair. That's cool. But this felt so heavy. And a lot of times the flashbacks said the same things. It didn't feel like they always added to the story in any meaningful way. And a lot of times it just kind of reinforced like, yes, Grimes and the main character, protagonist, what's her name?
Yes.
Alice and Grimes have a rough relationship. It's rocky, and Grimes favors Peter, and Alice doesn't like it. And that's like most of the flashbacks. And that's not good. Just it was I really I could tune out and not miss much, and that's not good.
Yeah, the flashbacks were very redundant.
Perhaps now maybe I don't know if this is what is your opinion on this? I think this book would have been like 3 or 4 times better if you shave off a couple hundred pages. It feels like a much shorter story that she extends into something much larger for not much gain. And I think you she could have gained a lot by chopping a lot of it away. And perhaps it would have hit harder if the stream of events happens quicker. I think there are fundamental problems beyond that, but I think it's too long with not enough substance.
I agree with that. I definitely think this book was way too long for what it was. The plot just wasn't that, like, it didn't warrant that many pages. A lot of it felt like it was filler. And I actually think Professor Grimes had more of a presence through his absence. You know what I mean? Like he felt like a lot more mysterious when it was just like a casual line mentioning him. The flashbacks just made him seem like kind of a douchebag. And well, like at the very end of the book, Alice kind of realizes that he really wasn't that great. He was just a douchebag, which is kind of, not the point, but it is kind of the point at the end, to make this figure that seems larger than life to Alice finally just be human, because he is just human. He's just he's just a douchebag, very
And
abusive.
this is I guess going back to characters a little bit, but I see where this could have gone. This could have been a really deep exploration of grief and grieving someone you hate. And that's like deep and fascinating and hard to handle because I think everybody, most people in their lives at one time or another will experience grief over somebody they don't like. Somebody will die and they will feel torn apart despite the fact that they never enjoyed them in life. And that's a weird thing. That's a really weird thing that people have a hard time dealing with. And that kind of felt like what was happening here. And I had honestly no hope that it was going to fulfill that, to be honest, because I think from the start, there's a massive tonal issue of it wanting to be, silly and goofy and fun, but also wanting to say something real. But it's too goofy to say anything serious, but too serious to be funny. And so it falls in this kind of lukewarm, gross middle area where I never really laughed much, but I also never felt any of the impact because of how lightweight the rest of it felt. There's some really serious reveals about like sexual assault and things that are heavy that warrant something serious. And I mean, in the moment, it's serious, but all of the, I would say, just like hyperbolic, dramatic nature of a lot of the other parts of the book makes it harder. I mean, guys, this is not what PhD school is like, at least for me. I can only speak from my own experience. It has not been like this. It's actually not, you're I'm not staying up every night till like 2 a.m. and I have like a normal life. It's kind of like a job. And it just it's hyperbolic. It paints him as like too evil. I honestly think, and it just makes everything land not as hard. I don't know. What do you think about the whole tonal thing? Because that to me stood out as a real problem that held the book back from saying anything meaningful.
It is very tonally inconsistent because it starts off, like you said, very silly. And I think I even texted you. I was like, this is really funny. Like, I like it. These characters are kind of not good people. But then, like, 50 pages in, it changes into a more like heartfelt, remorseful story where like Alice kind of regrets that her relationship with Peter has sort of strained over the last few years. And then it goes even further and it gets very serious with her past with Grimes, a very abusive, a very toxic past. History, but then the next scene will be something really funny and silly, and then you have Peter, who's this really happy, jovial character, and so it's very inconsistent. It feels like Kuang never quite found the tone she was going for, or maybe she found it too late. And it sort of feels like the type of book that she didn't rewrite. Like, she wrote the first draft, and it was a really good first draft, writing wise, but not necessarily like tone wise. Like, she didn't go back to fix the parts that she changed her mind on. That's what it feels like to me. I will
And
say though,
I
like her story or Alice's commentary regarding like grad school and Grimes. Like I haven't gone to grad school yet, and I assume it's a very extreme outlier sort of experience that Alice had. But that is the part that interested me the most because I had an internship at a lab with a bunch of PhD students, and they did describe life as like pulling a lot of all-nighters and a lot of like stressful nights and trying to figure out how to do things on their own, a lot of imposter syndrome. So
mm,
like those things I feel
that's
she
real. Yeah.
explored really well.
Yeah, no, the imposter
Right.
syndrome element was really good because it's like, okay, you've been smart your whole life, you've never been like stupid, but now all of a sudden you're surrounded by like a bunch of people who are more brilliant. And she landed that very well. Like that to me was honestly one of my favorite parts of the book, of both
Yeah,
of
like
them
that was the
feeling
most
that way,
interesting part.
of like Peter feeling that way as well. Peter feeling like he can't do it and like he can't do it because of X and Y. Like that was so interesting. And how the advisor really like pushed into that and manipulated them through their imposter syndrome. Like that was cool. That not cool, but interesting. I honestly think that perhaps the story would have been better if they never went to hell at all. Or hear me out. This is something weird. I was thinking about this during the book, and you know what? This is a good time to introduce World. It's a little early, but I'm about to talk about World. World, I give it a 5 out of 10. Would you give it?
Me too. Five
Yeah,
out of ten.
yeah. And one of the things that I think honestly she maybe should have done if she really was married to the whole like going to hell idea, remove magic. It didn't feel relevant enough. Uh, they're already in hell, and you don't really get to see how it impacts the world in its entirety because it doesn't seem like it does. It seems like our normal world just also magic is basically like a department at a university, and that's the only difference. And it just didn't impact much. And whenever they got there, it was hard. And of course, the paradox thing seems more like an excuse to talk about paradoxes rather than actually anything meaningful. Like she could have just used hell and hell's rules and played with that instead. And it it felt more like she was checking a box of saying, okay, I need to have my cool magic system check. Which I mean, it is like it's neat, pentagrams and doing your chalk thing. Like that's neat. It's cool. And she uses it, but at the same time, I think it distracts a little bit from something that could have been a lot more about being a PhD student. Instead, I think it's bogged down with a lot of honestly kind of pointless descriptions of this magic system that, to be honest, I don't really felt mattered. It didn't feel super integral. I mean, in the end, it's only important because she sacrifices Grimes, right, to for them to go up to ascend. But has the ultimate paradox or whatever it's called. She has the great paradox that's like a plant. So that's an in-world, like that's
The
an
Dialethea.
in-hell, the Dialethea. It's an in-hell thing. It's not magic that she's doing. That's an in-hell thing. So to me, I don't know. I just wasn't necessarily convinced over the magic being integral to the world. Sorry to compare, but in Babel, it's so integrated into the fabric of society that you get a sense that the translation magic that they're talking about in Babel, if you don't know in Babel, the magic system is like what's lost in translation is the magic. So you have people, writing things in different languages to on like silver or something to cause the magic. And it's like part of all of London. It's what makes Oxford and London like run. It's what built the British Empire. It explains a lot, whereas here it just doesn't. They have some offhand remarks that feel again like filler, where they talk about the importance of magic in the war, but then it still is like, yeah, but the atomic bomb took precedence. Also, like computers, became more important, and magic's not important. Yet they're literally like duplicating. Like this seems like it would be essential to society, and it's just not. I just wasn't convinced. It just wasn't convincing to me. I don't know. Do you have a different thought? What is your? I I don't know.
I really don't. I mean, like Babel, the magic system in Babel is one of its like selling points. It's one of the things that makes Babel such a great book. Like ending aside, right? The magic system is so intricate, so interesting, and so important that it really sticks with you even after the book is wrapped up, right? The whole idea of like lost in translation, the meanings that are lost in translation serving as magic, the whole idea of like that's one of the reasons why the British Empire is able to sort of rule over the world and its colonies. It really you don't get any of that here. Magic is interesting on a superficial level, and then it just sort of fades away. The only the only ways it plays a role in this book are first of all, it gets them to hell. It gets the characters to hell, and it serves as an excuse for them to not have to worry about food or water. That's it. That's literally it. I mean, the chalk doesn't even work in hell. Eventually they do learn that it works, but even then they don't even use it until the very, very end.
Yeah, and whenever Peter like kills himself the first time using magic, but again, like all this stuff could have been done, in my opinion, without
With the
magic. And
magic
like,
of hell.
yeah, the magic of hell, guys. You heard it here first. Hell is magic.
Hell has to be magical.
Hell has to be magical. No, like we have plenty of other stories that don't involve an alternate magic system that utilize the magic of hell. I mean, like Dante is obviously the chief example. Like the idea of traveling into hell to retrieve somebody is not a unique concept. And while I mentioned at the beginning that this is a unique combination that we've never seen before, perhaps we didn't need to see it. I didn't necessarily buy its existence. That's why I thought perhaps it would be better to not include magic or not include hell at all and have the magic system be part of the life and lean into that, PhD experience where you get to know all of the other cohort. You get to know the other advisors and you're really in the moment there. But because that was all flashback for us, I simply just didn't care as much because it wasn't ultimately important to the characters in the moment. Because of course, that's one of the bad things about flashbacks. The characters survive, and that the real story is in the present. And so it just didn't feel like it mattered as much. And of course, I understand the author using flashbacks to build up characters and to add to the world and all that, but that felt like it's all it was. And I don't know if that necessarily was the best choice.
I never thought about it that way, but yeah, that's such a great way to explain it. It's flashbacks are not the story, therefore you already know that, you know, the characters are going to be okay, like outside of the flashbacks. The real story happens outside of the flashbacks. The flashbacks themselves become sort of footnotes, they don't really matter too much
I keep
unless they're done really well, and
my
they're not
drink is
particularly done
condensating
well
on
here.
my drink keeps condensating on me and I have to drop. So do you see this? It's because
I can't.
it keeps dripping. I have like drops all over me. It's all right.
Mm,
I drop more. I keep
when
dripping
have you
more.
never had a drop?
That's true, I
Just
guess.
a messy drinker.
I do. I think it's just we can chalk it up to like me being messy and chalk. I like the magic system. Got him. We could chalk it up to
I
me
mean,
just being
have you
messy.
ever
I
seen
think,
yourself eat spaghetti though?
yeah.
Like
Oh,
it's
it's horrible.
just messy, man.
I know, dude. Today I was eating an enchilada and I dropped like half of it
God,
in between myself and like the couch side, and the dog went crazy and he like stuffed his face in there and started eating my enchilada. It was all over me, all over the couch, all over the dog. It was a mess. Anyways,
classic Gabe moment.
yeah, no, dude, it was unfortunate. It was really good though. I made white chicken enchiladas. They were absolutely delicious. I highly recommend it. If anybody out there is hungry, go make some white chicken enchiladas. It's a good time. A lot of cheese. It's ideal.
Cheesy.
But yeah, no, the world just it didn't feel believable. And what was your metric before? Was like 5 is our normal world. That's what I like view as. Is that what you said? You're like 5 is Earth.
Yeah,
Do I think it's cooler than Earth or not cooler than Earth? So this is
yeah, that's
essentially just as
exactly.
cool as Earth.
It's just Earth adjacent. A lot of it was just Earth. You know, like hell is a campus,
Yeah.
hell is a writer's market. Like, okay, I get it, but you're not really telling me anything from that observation or that metaphor. You know.
Yes. Oh, that's actually a really good point. No, I think possibly that's part of the tone issue also is a lot of the like explorations into what hell is feels like a joke a little bit or like an inside
It's
joke, to be
very on the
honest.
nose without
Yeah.
any point.
Yeah, it didn't really expand into anything more. And over again, it was like, oh, look, they're writing their dissertation. You know, they're trying to
It
find
was funny.
the truth. They're like, I got it, but it didn't go anywhere else, and it didn't shock me. Like we never ran into anything that really made me like
Like
stop.
one thing that really got me was like, okay, yeah, hell is based on your experience of the world, and for these characters, their experience of the world is largely limited to a college campus. Okay, cool premise right there. And hell has this like what is it like 8 layers? Like
Yeah, I think it's 8
the
layers.
eight
I
layers
swear.
of hell. Yeah. So like each of them have like their own sin, and they go through all these things. They go to like a library, they go to a writer's bazaar, they go through all these places, and like the metaphor for like how the sinners deal with their sin is cool, but then our characters themselves just kind of walk past those things without much of a
Yeah,
challenge, and it's like, okay, well, what's the point of this? There's no trial here.
I was wondering about. Okay, no, I forgot about that because I guess it just didn't hit hit me because I just didn't care enough. But like, yeah, they kept just going like, oh yeah. We don't gotta. I mean, we don't have a transcript. So sorry. We'll just keep going. And it really
Like,
felt like
okay,
we got duped as an audience that they didn't. Because I think the idea would be like they have to learn the lessons in order to get to
hmm
the ultimate place, and it just was like
like this story primes itself for like great like character development in a like sequence
step
of
by step.
stages,
Yeah,
yeah, like
it's literally
literally. I
built-in.
mean, it's a catabasis. That's what catabasis is. But this book is not catabasis at all. It's just like a like a cruise through hell, and they kind of surf through the waves of the Lethe.
You need to
Like,
title
okay,
this episode like Katabasis Fact or Fiction. I think that'd be good. Um
like okay,
like yeah, dude. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. They really do just keep going and ignore the main essential point of these layers is that they go through. And I was also expecting a bit more real world references. Like I expected more her to reference more like real world scholars or like people in the field that were really relevant, like in hell. And I don't think, I mean, I very well could have just missed it 100%, right? But I mean, it felt like the perfect opportunity to call out like current, and as of the juicy, call out current scholars that she doesn't like. I think that'd be kind of funny. I mean, like Dante did it. Like, have the people you don't like in hell. It's kind of, it's a good opportunity to do some, which I understand. But if you're gonna deal with something as controversial as hell, with hell, like to begin with, I mean, literally, the chalk is drawing pentagrams. She clearly is okay with diving into some of the controversial elements of a story. I just felt she could have taken it a step further. I would have liked her to go closer to the line, but maybe I'm an outlier here. Maybe I think it partly depends on, what people believe like an author has a responsibility to do, but I think it could have gone a bit deeper.
The very least, she could have used magicians, like characters, like real life characters that have already passed away, like, the great scientist of our time and before, and have them be shades in this world and help her out. But all the characters that she meets are very, as far as I know, they're all fictional,
Yeah, as far as
There's
I know.
there's like the implication that John Grade is someone else, but even he was kind of just entirely fictional.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what that was about. It felt like, I mean, maybe it's going over our heads. Maybe it's supposed to be somebody. Maybe it's her. Dude, I don't know this is for sure. This is my hope, my dream, my guess is that that's her advisor because she's a PhD student. I don't know if she's graduated
Hmm.
yet, but she's a PhD student of Kuang. So I was like, maybe she put her advisor in. That'd be kind of sick. That'd be really
That's
cool.
yeah, that could be it. That could be it.
I'm gonna be so upset if it's not. It's like
Yeah,
it's gonna be
because she
so
left that one
disappointing.
open to interpretation. So we'll
Okay, I had
see.
a question. So, now I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but so whenever a living soul dies in hell, they're gone forever, right? They're
Hmm.
dust. But then Peter dies in hell, and then he's brought back. How does that
That's
make
true.
sense? I was really confused. It's like this is like the one thing they establish is that your soul itself is like sprinkled into the void. Like you're gone. There is no memory of you anymore. And then all of a sudden, like poof, he's gone. He's back. Just like that's what felt interesting. I mean, disappointing. Number one, because I'm like, this is kind of a lame way to kill Peter, and it doesn't feel like it's the right moment. I didn't think it was right, but that's why I thought she was going to bring him back. But again, it felt like it was breaking the rules of hell that was kind of like set out there.
But if you remember what Lord Yama says at the very end to Professor Grimes, there are no rules in hell. Which again, it's just a lazy excuse.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
it's very lazy. I don't think there's a legitimate reason as to why Peter comes back. And quite frankly, maybe it was because I was on a business trip and I was working so much. Like my
yeah.
whole day I was just working.
You're
Maybe it
basically
was
a
the fact
PhD
that I was
student.
maybe it was the fact that I was listening to an audiobook and I don't really do audiobooks. Or maybe it was just the fact that this book is kind of boring. I
Yeah,
didn't really care to like
yeah,
even think about the fact that Peter's back. Like, oh, of course he's back, but like
yeah. No,
emotionally, I didn't really care.
well, again, I finished it. I finished it a few hours ago, so that's why it was immediately on
Yeah,
my
like,
mind. I was like, wait a second, that
it's
isn't
like
that
he broke the rules.
like he just
I
died
guess hell
yesterday in
has no
my head.
rules,
Like,
and I
so
guess it fits the motif that Peter was trying to like explain throughout the whole book, which was what was it? It was like paradoxes imply that like everything is impossible and nothing is impossible. So like there's always exceptions to the rules. And so maybe he is like the ultimate exception to the rule.
yeah.
Again, I don't think any
See,
of those answers are
maybe
satisfying.
yeah, maybe part of it is like it doesn't feel like it deserves that answer.
Yeah, it was not a
I have one.
rewarding moment.
So I have one really big complaint that you won't know that's not relevant to you at all. But listening to the book, the weirdest thing. So there's a male voice actor and a female narrator, right? There's
I
two.
think I know where you're going with this.
So did you listen to the end of the book?
The end of the book is so
Yes,
weird.
it was so weird. So
That threw me off so
oh my
much.
gosh. So there's one chapter, like the one chapter that switches to Peter's perspective is the male narrator, which I kind of expected because I heard a male narrator. So I was like, okay, we're probably going to get Peter's perspective, which that's also another criticism. I would have liked more Peter chapters. That would have been way more
hmm
interesting. Getting one chapter from him felt kind of shoehorned in and something essentially about how she just couldn't figure out how to do it any other
I'm
way.
really glad you brought that up. Like, if you are adding another POV, you don't add that POV at the very end of the story.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this with like my book that I was writing, where like when I was writing The Bastion pre-order now. When I was writing The
hmm
Bastion, I included a character's like perspective for one chapter, like before something tragic happens to him, and
Piss me off.
really, I was like, he was drawing on the mirror, being like, "I'm coming for you, baby," like talking about his daughter. Immediately tries to draw a connection, and then just axes him. It's so funny.
I forgot about that.
I thought it was funny. But anyways, Arf Kwong commits the same sin I did, and it felt really unearned and not something. It just was jarring, I think maybe is the right term. But the thing I was actually talking about was at the end of the book, whenever Peter enters, like it's Peter's voice. It's the voice actor of Peter who randomly juts in. Like for the entirety of the book, the female voice actor had been voice acting for Peter as well. Like she had been doing like her male female, her male voice whenever she's reading it, like a normal narrator, like a normal narration that you'd expect. But for some reason, right at the end, I think is literally in the middle of a chapter, Peter's voice comes in, and then the voice actor for Peter starts voicing Lord Yama as well. But it's really jarring because we've heard both of their voices as the female voice actor doing them both. And like mid chapter, they switch, and it's so it really took me out of the moment, which like is bad, obviously, really bad. So I don't know who did that, who decided that, but that was a bad choice. I just was like,
It
I
was
feel
a
like an objectively
horrible choice.
horrible choice. Like
Like either you
literally,
do it all book long or you don't do it at all.
well, like it was
And
like
then they did it for the
easier.
last chapter.
Oh, it was easier to do the other way. Like they went out of their way, put in more work to do something that's objectively worse. And
And
yeah,
the
that was,
audio levels were off for both
yeah,
of
they were
them. Like the
different.
woman sounded normal and the male voice was just like so soft.
Super. Yeah, it was awful. It was so bad. So, anyways,
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was running on like 2 hours of sleep when I listened to that part. So I thought it was me like just making stuff up.
not at all.
You just
No, listen,
validated my experience.
yeah, no, I was like, I gotta bring this up. Like, this was awful.
Horrible
Like, it was
choice.
so bad. Yeah. So yeah, that was something I would say. And again, that's not to do with the world. What are we missing now? We got to go through. We still have 2 more. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's go into something a little better, right? Style. I'll go first because I gave it a higher score than you, right? So I gave it an 8 out of 10. I thought the style was really good. It was very slick, very clean. I really enjoyed like the prose itself. And that's not to say, I mean, upon reflection, I probably would rate it just a little bit lower, specifically because of a little time. Like sometimes it wasn't super clear in the setting. Like I couldn't visualize where we were. It suffered a little bit from that white box syndrome where the characters are doing things in a featureless space. However, the actual prose itself, whenever talking about these paradoxes, as we've talked before, it was beautiful. It was very pretty. And this is my ultimate suggestion. Arf Kwong should write more essays. This is going to be kind of a hard take. And I think Arf Kwong is amazing. I think that she's a very accomplished author. Obviously, she's doing something right and she shouldn't listen to me because I'm just some guy talking. But I think that she would do significantly better writing essays, just like a ton of essays. Write a bunch of essays. Do like C.S. Lewis style, write essay books because her prose itself is fantastic. And the way she talks about things is fantastic. But she doesn't tell a good story, just to be blunt. I think at this point for me, I'm not convinced that to be clear, I've not read a Poppy War. I don't think I would like the Poppy War trilogy. Judging from what I've heard about it, it seems like it would run into some of the revenge fantasy stuff that I really don't like, that really bothers me, that you get a little bit of in Babel. Like, I don't think that's my sort of thing. So I'm not sure if I'll read it just because I don't want to intentionally read something that would frustrate me. That seems weird. However, where was it going? I'm not necessarily convinced that she can tell a good story. And I think she can write a really good essay. So I'd like to see some more essays from her. I'd like to see something else. And she wrote a book called, I think it's Yellowface. I might be just super
Yellowface.
racist. Okay, cool. I was
No,
like, if I just drop that name out of nowhere, yeah. Sorry, yeah. Yellowface is the book title, which I haven't read, and I don't think is essays. I think it's fiction. I don't know if it's fantasy. I haven't read it, so I might want to check that out because that might run into something that I'm a bit more interested in than her fantasy work. But yeah, that's what I would really say about style. So it's a very cautious 8. How about you, Nor? What'd you give it?
I gave the style a 7 out of 10. I actually think I liked it less than I did Babel. I think Babel just had that more fantastical element to it, and it was more alluring to me. I felt more drawn to that world. The style felt a lot more magical in that sense. Here, it felt like she was trying to be funny and clever and smart, and so like I was more conscious about her goal tone wise. Whereas in Babel, I just felt like I was drawn into the story. She's a great writer, though. Like, don't get me wrong, she's a great writer. Her prose is amazing. The way she describes these really complex ideas is very awesome. Like, I only know about maybe like 50% of what she talks about, but I can appreciate it, you know? Again, it's no Andy Weir, where like, if you don't know what she's talking about, you more than likely won't. But if you have an inkling of like logic and paradoxes and calculus and history and literature, then you do get the reference here and there, and you get the gist of it. And the way she explains it is it's awesome.
I didn't even think about that.
Descriptions of the world, though.
We probably got
No,
like
go ahead.
completely different things out of it because I didn't understand any of the math crap. I was like, I don't know. Dude, I never took calculus. I did
Okay,
my
well,
pre-calc, then I was done. So, like, I did not take a single math class in college. You don't understand. I took logic as my math class. So I never took math in college. I've not taken it for like, I don't know, a bunch of years, 6 years. And so none of that mattered to me. I went, yeah, math mumbo jumbo, skip, skip, skip. Foucault, I know history. So like I think we probably took like
we got
completely
the opposites.
different. That's really good.
Here's
Dude,
the thing,
imagine
okay? Like,
if we read together, like in the same room, we probably could have understood
we would have
everything.
gotten all of the story.
We would have
Yes.
gotten yeah, maybe that's our problem. We didn't really get it. We didn't get the full story. If only we got the
And
full
like,
story.
don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, you know me. I got a C in calculus, so like, I'm not the smartest when it comes to math.
No, it wasn't calculus you
And
retook. That was chemistry, right?
I retook chemistry,
Okay,
so
yeah.
not calculus. But like,
You
I
took your
know
C and you
enough of
read.
like.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me retake calculus because I got a C. Like, I technically passed. They're like,
That's
good enough, you're done.
so dumb. But I mean, okay, you
I
still took
know.
calculus. You still took calculus. I didn't.
Hmm.
I don't know.
And like that being said, like I still appreciated some of the calculus. I like the lore behind calculus, if that makes sense. It's pretty cool once you really get into the nitty-gritty of that. But there's this one scene in the book where she uses a spell to stop like the bone things. And so like they're running towards her, and then halfway through they stop, then they start moving again, and halfway through that moment they stop again. And then halfway through that to her they stop again. So like every time they get closer to her, they stop halfway to the point where like they're so close to her and they keep stopping because it's literally, again, I might be completely wrong, but if I remember correctly, that's how limits work in calculus. It just keep like an asymptote, it keeps reaching zero, but it never quite gets there. So
Yeah,
like I appreciated the cleverness of the spells that she did use. I
that
just
is really
wish
cool.
she could used much more. She rarely used the magic. The magic was cool when it was used. It just
No,
wasn't used.
that's a really good point. So great example of something that I was like, I don't understand what's happening. Okay. Like like it just that just went over my head and I just went, okay, I understand. Got it. She's not gonna die by the bone things sick. But
Yeah,
that's
like
really
there
cool.
is.
If only that was explained. If only that'd be so cool if like there was an Andy Weir style explanation. I understand like
Mhm.
her character's not, just to be frank, as likable as the main guy in Project Hail Mary. Like
As
there's
Ryland, right?
yeah, it's not as likable as Ryland Grace. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, why would she care to explain it? She'd be thinking in her smart brain terms and doesn't care to explain it. Yes, still, that is so cool. And it's something that I completely missed out on. The thing is, to me, it's not that I missed out on something cool. It's that I fundamentally did not understand the spell being cast. And that's a problem. Whenever I fundamentally don't understand what's happening because it relies on this knowledge of calculus that, I mean, you know, a
Like,
dull person
who
like me
really
wouldn't
takes
know. Yeah,
calculus, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like I don't know. And so it's like, yeah, to read this book, you got to know calculus is crazy. And I mean, again, yeah, I was able
And
to just
again,
move on.
that is not your responsibility as a reader. It's if anything, it's the responsibility of the author to like explain that in a way that like, okay, you get the gist of the spell. You are able to appreciate the elegance of it because it really is an elegant spell. The spells she uses are really elegant, and it really shows that Kuang is so smart that she's able to use these like really boring, dense topics and make them so cool, but only if you already know the dense, boring lectures behind them. So
Ooh, yeah,
that's kind of on her. That's a big detriment on her part, maybe. But like,
that's good.
you
Yeah,
know,
that's a good point. That's it. Well, because like I was thinking about earlier, like the essay thing. Like that is one of her strong suits is taking like academia essentially, like as a whole, and turning that into something that's magical and entertaining. She's good at that. Like she really is good at magic systems. Like she is. I think she's objectively good at it. The key thing though is turning that into a compelling story and using those magic systems in a way that feels meaningful, that feels clever to the reader. So perhaps I'm wrong about the whole essay thing because she really is good at that. Like she absolutely does take these dense concepts and turn it into something new. And it's not always something I understand, but it is new. I can identify that, yeah, she probably knows what she's talking about. And that's enough. But at the same time, I feel like I'm missing out on a lot. Okay, we have one more thing to get into in its impact, and we both gave it a 4, right? A 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have gathered from the rest of our reactions to all of this, but it didn't really impact us in any sort of way. I was not offended. I was not upset or angry. It felt just kind of dull.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the Epiphany scene in Soul, except without any of the soul. Like, like it just felt like it happened. I didn't really like if when I was watching Soul, I was like, yes, 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 you're getting this. You're finally getting the meaning of like life. Alice just
Dude,
kind of got the meaning of life, and I was like, of course you did. Like, how can you not have seen this whole time? I was more annoyed, but
No, that's a really good point because that's a fantastic comparison. I never really thought about that. Epiphany is like a beautiful song. I have that in my writing playlist, and I have to like
yeah,
skip it whenever I'm not writing something really sad.
We've used it in our D&D sessions.
Yes, we have used it in D&D because
It's
it's
a great
so good.
track.
It's so good, and it really is like honestly, there are very few tracks that I think elicit a very specific emotion, and there is such a longing from Epiphany as a song. And now that's not at all related to R.F. Kuang's Katabasis, but it's still really cool. But Soul
But
is a
like
really
it
good
even has
comparison
the same
piece.
ending.
Yeah, no, you're right. It really does, yeah. But Katabasis as a comparison piece to Soul is fantastic because they both have a very similar thing going on. Very similar. Not exact. And perhaps the story would be better told from Grimes's perspective. Perhaps this would be a more
Ooh.
compelling narrative of, oh, we fixed the story. Perhaps it'd be better if Grimes is the one who has to overcome this, character fault. And he learns the meaning of life through that. But yeah, through Soul, I mean, you have this spoilers for Soul. So sorry for spoiler. It's
It's been
it's a lot
five
of
years,
years old.
guys.
I
Come
mean,
on,
and
guys.
also to be
Come on.
honest, I mean, come on, the guy is big deal. The guy finds the meaning of life. You get it, okay? It's not shocking. But that moment where he's understanding like that the moments matter, he's showing us that. He never says he might at the end of the movie, but like in that moment, in the epiphany, an aptly
Such a good
named
scene.
song, he discovers it through music. Like he's playing the music and you feel that he understands. In this book, I think that we just get told that she understands.
We literally get told.
I think
I think you're
like she
right.
literally says, I don't even remember the other character's name, but the good shade that helps her at the end and saves the day by conveniently having the great contradiction. So her character is the one who dreams of all the things of life, right? Who dreams of what life is about. And I'm pretty sure that the main character literally just goes, yeah, it's what she was talking about.
Exactly. Oh my God, yes.
It's
Like
so it's so like
Elfspeth talks about like,
yeah,
like
like
eating the cookies and
I just want
like
to eat the
feeling the
cookies and feel
air.
the air. Like that's literally
Yeah,
just what
like
she literally
then she repeats the
repeats the
same
line.
mantra.
Like it's so sad
Like
because
she
that means that
steals.
she doesn't feel any actual meaning. She's drawing
No, she
meaning from
steals
her other person's
Elspeth's.
experience of life. That's so sad.
That's so
So
frustrating. I can't believe I didn't feel that frustrated as I was reading it. Like
no,
I'm
I think
feeling the
it's
frustration now.
yeah. No, I didn't feel frustrated as I was reading it either. I think it's honestly, because comparing it to Soul is because that's the same exact moment. Like you're looking for the same exact moment where somebody finds meaning beyond the surface level thing, right? They find meaning in life itself. Instead of saying like what's the point, they understand that it's the little moments that matter, right? That whole thing.
And also,
And
you're right.
it
Like
just doesn't oh my gosh.
In Soul, the main character Joe, he is remembering like the tiny things that 22 really liked, right? Like the other Soul character,
Yeah.
like the little moments, the nonsensical moments, and then he starts to remember the tiny details that he enjoys about life. But here in Katabasis, Alice literally steals the moments from Elf.
It's so funny to
Okay.
me because it would have been such an easy edit to just be like remembering those moments with Peter, like just being like,
And there were
sitting
so
in
many moments with Peter.
sitting in the basement, going to eat Indian food, staying up all night together, doing our homework, like
It's they
all
talk
those
about it
little
so
things.
many times. So many times. You would think.
And granted, I still don't think I would have felt much at all, but like it at least would have felt like something. And yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah, that was a bit of a fumble.
Oh my gosh. And so in really conclusion, we got to rate this book on our scale. We have it's a collage, right? That's what we decided it
Yeah, we say
is.
collage,
It's a
yes.
collage of books because it really is about our experience. It's not a hierarchical scale. And a couple of the books on a couple of the variations are like collector's edition, hardcover, paperback, ebook, library book. Anything else? Am I
Mm-hmm.
missing any of them?
Garage sale and PDF.
Ah, yeah, garage sale and PDF. Okay. And we both agree on this. I mean, it's an ebook.
It's an
It's
ebook.
definitely an ebook. Now, the art is cool. Like, I didn't get to see it in any of the maps in the audiobook version. I didn't see any of the maps, but I gotta say, it looks neat. Like the cover art. I looked up concept art for the book in some of the collector's editions. It looked really cool. It added far more to my perspective on the world than the descriptions did. So that's saying something, but it's definitely an ebook. It's something that you'd pay $4 for, $4 or $5 for.
Like this right here is a map in the book, and it doesn't really help,
Yeah, no,
but
that
it's
wouldn't
pretty
help at
cool.
all. That wouldn't help at all. So, anyways, ebook. I would pay a few dollars for it. Read it on my phone
And you know what's
and
funny?
call it a day.
The real funny thing is that I have a Kindle and it always shows me like these ads. And one day it showed me Katabasis, and that's where I found out about the book. And I was like, oh, okay, we should check this one out. And now
Dude.
I'm thinking maybe I should have just bought it on the ebook, on the Kindle. Because, it was okay. I'm glad I read it, I guess. Honestly, I'm not particularly glad I read it. I
Yeah, I
kind
to
of
be
had,
to be completely honest, if we weren't talking about it and I wasn't reading it with you, if this wasn't part of our little book club situation, I wouldn't have finished it.
Mhm.
And that's no shame to the
Yeah.
book. I know there are better books. Like my TBR list has definitely no books that I know are more fulfilling. That being
Mhm.
said, I mean the next book that we're reading is
It's gonna
so
be a
sick.
very exciting book.
Dude, okay. So, Nora, what are we reading? Go ahead and tell
We
them.
are gonna be
Get them
reading
ready.
the second book in the Hierarchy series, The Strength of the Few. Oh, it
So
comes out
hyped.
November 11. It's gonna be so exciting. We're
Oh,
gonna
it's gonna be
binge read that
so good.
one. It's
Yeah,
gonna
it's
be
gonna be like a
such a good
lot
time.
really fast.
Such a good time. Yeah.
I am so excited. And the early reviews coming out are saying that the book is really good. And to be
Eh,
honest, I'm I'm sold from the first book, so I'm gonna love the second. I know I am.
It's gonna be such a fun time.
Yeah, I can't fathom me being disappointed, to be honest. And I'm really looking forward to something like that after this. After a book that
Mm-hmm.
fails to make a statement, I really want a book that like that makes
Makes
me
a
think
big one.
I want a big statement.
Big statements.
That being said, Nora, did you finish your drink?
Almost.
Come on, finish it off. Because here at Novels and Nightcaps, we finish our drinks. Good night, everybody.